You're watching Focus. I'm Haig Ellian. We're going to be talking about genocide tonight, a subject very dear to the hearts of my guests tonight, Clara Andonian and Steve Barbarian, who is watching us at the moment, and of course myself.
Our parents that were part of the genocide were the ones that were the victims, and they also told us the stories of what happened that at that time of 1915. And my grandfather had already come to this country. He was in one of the first genocides up in 1896, I believe. And so in 1915, when it happened, my grandmother gave up my mother as a young child to the orphanage. At that time, the missionaries had come into Armenia, and there were several different orphanages: the German orphanage, the Danish orphanage, the American orphanage, and the Near East relief orphanages. And she was put in that, and as a result, 9 years later, she found my mother in a different country. These missionaries took care of these children. They took them from Turkey, Syria, to Greece, and then they ended up in Beirut, where their names were put on a list, and people that were looking for their lost ones could go and check the list every day. And my grandmother saw her name on the list, and this is a picture of my grandmother and mother in Beirut when she found her. And at this time, she was 11 years old. This is a picture of her in Greece with the Near East orphanage and relief orphanage that was there. And of course, this is 1925, before her mother found her. And then after her mother found her, she got in contact with her husband, my grandfather, and told him the daughter that we thought was dead is alive. So my grandfather made possible for them to come to the United States. But when they came to Ellis Island, they could not come in because the quota was filled. So they took the ship to Cuba. And there they lived in Cuba for 2 years. But in the meantime, my grandfather traveled down to Cuba to meet his daughter for the first time and his wife after being separated over 13 years. And this is a picture of them in Cuba after my grandfather found them. And then this is a picture of my mother in Cuba also. And
How old was she here?
She was 11 years old here. And this is 1926. And my father also was a victim of the genocide, and he was also with the orphanage children, and they were taken from, they traveled with the missionaries and they saved them. And then my uncle found my father in Greece in 1925 also, and the Near East Relief Orphanage had their names, so he brought him to the United States through the port of Rhode Island. That's how he was able to come into this country. And he saw his whole family being murdered in front of him as a child, and him and his sister were the only ones that were able to escape.
Now,